It's been a minute since I've done an IG live, folks, so I just wanted to make sure everything worked here. Hi, everyone. Glad you can join. Yeah, this is going to be a very good conversation because of all the shit that's happening right now. And Grace Lee has been just amazing in terms of her work. Oh, okay. How are you doing? How am I doing, Kat? Oh, hi, Kat. How am I doing? I am. Thank you for asking. I'm doing okay. I know some of you who follow my podcast, my last episode, I said I was taking a little bit of a hiatus just because I was feeling really burnt out and sort of looking out for my mental health. It's on and off, guys. Let's be honest. I mean, I think we're all probably dealing with different things at different times and it ebbs and flows. So for me, it's definitely been on again, off again. Certainly, the brutal murders of Michelle Go and Christina Lee of late have not helped the situation for any of us, I think. But yeah, it's been a challenging time, and of course, let's not forget what's happening in Ukraine right now. That is a tragedy completely unfolding. The violence and the truly the evil that's happening over there is astonishing. And I was saying a prayer this morning for the people of Ukraine and saying, God help them because this kind of evil in the world is just, it's tragic. It's tragic. I mean, it makes me emotional because I just think it's so unfair when innocent lives are affected that way. The Ukrainian people did nothing, right? They were just living their lives. They were trying to just, you know, live freely. And this evil authoritarian decides to invade. So I'm going off on a tangent just because I feel like it's something that needs to be acknowledged, certainly. And we need to pray that they're, going to be okay. Grace. Oh, here we go. Grace. There you are. Aha! Yay. She is going to be joining right now because I just let her in. Grace, there she
Hi,
is. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Good. I was afraid that for some reason I shut you out accidentally. I told you it's been a minute since I've had to do an IG live, so I'm like, man, I hope I know what I'm doing
Sorry, I had some technical difficulties on my end, so I
here.
apologize.
Okay. Hey, listen, I'm so glad to speak to you. And we had connected because of what happened with ABC News. And
Yeah.
for those of the viewers right now who aren't sure of what we're talking about, I'll just briefly kind of tell that story. You were at the vigil for Christina Lee in New York. And ABC News came out to do the story, as they should. And you know how I feel about mainstream media. Sometimes they completely just overlook major stories. So they came out to interview you as an activist because you're very active in the community. And unfortunately, on the air, they put your lower third when they identify the person that they're talking to as Michelle Go, who was the woman who was pushed in front of a subway last month and killed. So you put out this tweet that said, to ABC World News, my name is Grace Lee. I'm a community activist. Michelle Go was an Asian woman who was brutally murdered last month. I was at a vigil today for Christina Yuna Lee. Your mistake is harmful and further invisibilizes Asian women. And that really resonated with me because, once again, yeah, your point being, there we go. Oh, we're all the same. Doesn't matter. Yeah, Michelle, Grace, Christina, it doesn't matter. So tell
That's
me,
right.
tell me how you felt when you first saw this error. And obviously you tweeted out, but tell me what was going through your head.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's so great to be with other inspiring Asian American women talking about issues that are important to us. I'm so glad to be here today. Yeah, at first, my friend actually texted me a photo of his television with the lower, that's how I heard, that's how I saw it. He was like, "Did you see this?" And my interview had been shown on I had spoken with a few news channels, so I had seen like the local news, but I hadn't seen the national coverage. And I saw it, and it was like, I confused. I was like, wait, I was at a Christina Lee vigil. Why is there Michelle Go? And then I realized like they were naming me Michelle Go. And I just, I want to say that I was shocked and surprised, but I think, and everyone here would know, especially any person of color has had this experience of being othered,
Yeah.
of being called another by another person's name, just because you have the same skin color, you're from the same similar background, and it just put me into this like I just was. It was very hurtful, especially given the circumstances.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, it was like trauma on top of trauma, right?
Yeah.
This idea that we had just lost a sister in our community, an incredible young woman, right here down in Lower Manhattan, in my neighborhood, and then to be called the name of another woman who had tragically died. Even in our death, we have no dignity,
Yeah.
and within our
No
community,
identity. No identity. It's
no
like
identity. It's
total
like we've been
misidentification.
forgotten.
Yeah.
And I have to say, last week was really hard for me. I just, it really just brought up a lot of emotions and feelings that I think a lot of Asian women have been feeling. We're coming up along the 1 year anniversary of the shootings in Atlanta as well.
Yep.
And this idea that like we as Asian American women are really feel under attack and we feel
Yes.
scared. And I'm starting to have conversations with my friends, about like what's the best strategy to stand on a subway platform so you don't feel like you're going to get pushed off. My girlfriends are passing out pepper spray on the playground. It's so crazy that like this is becoming a normal part of how we
I
talk
know.
to each other.
Here's the thing, Grace, and this is what makes me angry. I mean, we should all be angry, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's like we are now prisoners in our own country,
Yes.
right? Our freedom is being taken away.
Hmm.
Our freedom to walk down the street, our freedom to take the subway, our freedom to, go home,
That's
we
right.
followed. And so it's beyond comprehension, but at the
Hmm.
same time, I want people to understand that this is how we're feeling. We're not
Yes.
making this shit up. This is how we're feeling
Hmm.
every day now, and particularly for those people who are living in these cities where these criminal acts are taking place.
Yes.
But we know that this could happen anywhere because it has.
Yes, that's right. And I think what's really important is to talk about the underlying racism that drives a lot of the violence against Asians and particularly Asian women. We know that 2/3 of Asian hate crimes are against women
Yep.
and senior women too. So, we feel particularly vulnerable. And so when I saw the cameras at the vigil, I wanted to talk about that. I wanted our voices to be heard. And that's why I kind of got, I had those, I went and spoke with reporters to talk about how Asian women are feeling right now. I'm also a mother. I'm raising three young girls down here in downtown Manhattan, 4, 6, and 9 years old. And like, it's heartbreaking to me to think, I don't know what Christina's family is feeling right now. I can't even imagine.
No.
And then also, for us, all of us in the Asian community, thinking about the future of the city and what our parents came here. My parents came as immigrants here, like to give us a better life and more opportunity. And I want that for my kids as well. I grew up in Ohio in Midwest, and
Wait,
it
so
wasn't
did I.
really
No.
where.
I grew up in Dayton.
Oh my gosh, Cleveland.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Yeah, so Ohio connection. It always happens. This
You
always
know, yeah.
happens. So, I came to New York City because I love the diversity here. I love that my girls get to be with, be in a community where they look like, they have people who look like them, teachers who look like them, students who do. But still, that doesn't protect us, from what's happening in our community and to our community right now.
No, no. And I think let's touch upon the idea that this is historic too, right?
Mhm.
The hypersexualization of women, the
Yes.
marginalization of women, the stereotypes, the false narratives, all of that has been around for centuries. And so we do have to look at that as compounding, the problem
Hmm.
of how Asian women are viewed. We're viewed as submissive, we're viewed as weak, we're viewed as
Yes.
victims, right? So
Hmm.
easy to attack and assault. And
That's
that
right.
narrative has to shift, obviously. But when this keeps on happening, and you see Asian women, even powerful, strong, independent Asian women saying, I don't want to take the subway,
Hmm.
I don't want to be out at night. That's
Yes.
that's a problem. That's we're becoming victims almost in, to that stereotype,
Yes.
right? When we don't want to be. We certainly
Hmm.
don't want to be. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I struggle with that because I'm like, damn it, I'm not falling for this. I'm not going to fall
Hmm.
into the trap. But at the same time, I worry.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel the same way. And I think that that's also why we have to be talking about, like, we have to have these conversations. We have to talk about how racism, whether explicit or implicit, uh, affects, and plays into the violence that we are seeing against Asians. And I think there needs to be some recognition that these aren't entirely random acts. When we see them, when statistically we are seeing like 300% increases in attacks against Asians, and two-thirds of those coming, from against Asian women. There are things underlying these attacks, racist tropes against Asian women. This is driving some of these attacks. So the I it's really hard. It's hard, but like these are the conversations we have to have, and that's why I posted that tweet. I
Yeah,
was like, oh, ABC is not going to get away with this one.
good.
And
And they apologized.
they
They
did. They
apologized
did.
8 days later. And honestly, Grace, honestly, I don't think they would have if there wasn't such an uproar.
Yes.
Let's be totally honest. Look, I've been in this business for over 30 years. I know how networks work. They're not going to admit to something if they don't have to.
Yes.
Okay, that's just the truth.
Hmm.
So the fact that we all got up in arms about it, I think that was a good thing. So it does show that we have the power. We
Hmm.
have the power to make a difference if we're willing to speak up and speak out and push back on things like this. But let me go back
I
to one
love that.
thing that you mentioned about the randomness and how I actually posted about this too. I'm actually tired of hearing, oh, yet another random act of violence.
Mm.
I'm sorry, there's a pattern now that we're seeing against Asians, on the streets, and these criminal acts against Asians, not just women, but we see the elderly and all that. So for us to continually be told that these are random acts, sorry, you're not hearing about white people being attacked all the time, randomly, or
Hmm.
even other communities as much as we're hearing about Asians consistently being attacked.
Hmm.
So again, it's the narrative and the way the story is being told that I think is misleading and
Yes.
dangerous.
Yes. No, I completely agree. And again, it's just if we don't identify the racism underlying these crimes, we'll never get to a place where we're really talking about how to solve the problem.
Right,
You know,
right.
and um, and I think that that was something that was very traumatic about the Atlanta shootings, and it really hit home for me when you know the the officers who were investigating or who were talking about the the shooting said, "Oh, the guy was having a bad day,
Okay. Yeah.
and he was acting out on sexual fantasies." Like that was just speaking like as if having a bad day um, you know, is a good
Justifies?
reason to
Yeah,
justifies it. And
right.
then also not really um, you know, just the fact that there was no like acknowledgement that this shooter had gone into three Asian owned businesses.
Yeah,
What did he expect to find behind each door
right.
of those businesses?
Exactly.
if it weren't for Asians. And you know, and so it felt very targeted, and it felt like we were not being heard or acknowledged in that when it happened.
And that's why I say over and over again, especially as an adjunct professor at USC,
Mm,
as a journalist, that without the proper representation in newsrooms and media who have the understanding of why there are these cultural differences and to really recognize that, right, as what it is, rather than just sort of like glazing over it saying, oh,
mhm.
let's just focus on the perpetrator and oh, yeah, he was having a bad day and he had a sex addiction. It had nothing to do with race.
Right.
Until that changes, these stories and the coverage,
Hmm.
is going to remain this way, sort of
Yeah.
one-sided and from like this sort of very like sort of myopic viewpoint, right? So
Yeah.
that's a challenge.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that the AAJA kind of took up this misidentification of my name, and we're able to have conversations with ABC Network about what that did, even if it was unintentional, how harmful it was to our community, especially at a time when we're experiencing so much trauma right now
Right.
over and loss. And I guess my question to you is, how should we be thinking about media? What can we do to make sure that, this doesn't continue to happen? Or like, um, how do we change the narrative from a media standpoint?
Well, I think one of the biggest things we can do is ask for better representation,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I know that a lot of people think that the media has improved over the years. In some ways, it has. You see a few more Asian faces on the air, right?
Hmm.
But in other ways, again, I've been doing this a long time and I've tracked this. On the network level, where you have the most eyeballs, it actually representation has gone down
Hmm.
when it comes to Asians. And I really do think it's a change in culture in the United States where, traditional media, viewership has gone down, right? And think about who's watching traditional media still. It's not
Hmm.
young people, it's not sort of like more sort of like in tune, young folks. It's sort of the older generation. And
Yeah.
who makes up that older generation for the most part in middle America, right?
Hmm.
So you think about that and who they're catering to, perhaps. And so
Hmm.
therefore, they're not going to put more people of color on there. They're going to probably do the
Yes.
opposite. So I really think there has to be more pressure on the media for better representation.
Hmm.
Because without that, without that different multiple perspectives, we're going to get that myopic view and
Yes.
of everything,
Hmm.
right? And that is going to be a problem. And without the educational background that we're not getting still, you know, thankfully Illinois, New Jersey, and other states that are starting to adapt more, sort of AAPI history. But
Yes.
we got a long way to go. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're watching the news and you only see a bunch of white faces, no offense to my colleagues, that's a problem. That's not
Hmm.
reflecting what this country is starting to look like,
Yep.
right? Asians are the fastest growing ethnic community in the country.
That's
And
right.
yet you would never know that when it comes to media coverage,
Hmm.
right?
Yep. And the stories that are covered.
And the stories that are covered.
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
So
and I think you make a great point. It's not only what you see, though, also, right? It's also who's in the background, who's the producer, who are,
exactly.
who's selecting the stories, who's writing the stories, right?
Right. No, it's a
Yeah.
whole team effort. And that's
Yeah.
why I put out the video after the mistake that they made about you to
Hmm.
explain, listen, folks, this isn't just a one person mistake. This is a multi-level mistake,
Hmm.
right? ABC News, just like every other network, there are multiple hands that the story has to go through for it to
Hmm.
go on the air.
Right.
There are multiple levels of checking. And so this was not a one person like, oh, the intern did it. No, 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 no. So that's where it's just like there's got to be more cultural understanding, sensitivity, awareness, right,
Hmm.
to these kinds of stories and to the fact that we're not all the same. We're not all the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and one of my favorite tweets, quote tweets, of my tweet was, if you can get Chris Pratt and Chris Hemsworth, if you can tell the difference between those two guys, then you should be able to tell the difference between three Asian American women.
It's so
I mean,
true.
yeah,
You never
and
see those mistakes, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
ex
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
It's the
yeah,
culture. Yeah.
and I think that yeah, it's almost like just the lack of care
Yeah.
that really was kind of what happens with it's like and that's the invisibilizing part, right? The misidentification, like the fact that we're just all the same person, the transferability, it dehumanizes us,
It
and that's
does.
what makes us victims, because it's easy. We're if you don't consider us humans, if you don't consider us valuable as individuals, that's what makes us vulnerable
Exactly.
as victims.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It takes our effort too,
Hmm.
to push back.
Yes.
That's why I love when people like you speak up and push back publicly, because
Thank you.
only then will people start paying attention and then become a little bit more sensitive. I'm sure ABC News may make this mistake again at some point, maybe not, but perhaps not for a while, having learned this lesson, through
Yes.
you, that, oh, okay, we need to be a little bit more careful when we're covering this type of story, instead of just like sort of dismissing it and not paying as much attention to
Hmm.
this versus, yeah, getting Chris Pratt and, Chris, whatever, Hemsworth, not mixed, right? But
Right.
yeah, it's
Right.
a level of where's the interest, where's the
Yes.
priority,
Hmm.
and the lack of prioritization when it comes to the overall Asian American community has been pretty obvious in the last couple of years for sure.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so, yeah, no, I think this is our time to really speak out.
yeah.
I think it's, and I think it's, we've, I think we talk a lot about how in Asian culture, we are, we don't, I mean, I know for a fact, I've seen racist things happen to my parents growing up, and they said, you know what, you just put your head down, you focus, you work hard, don't make a fuss, this, we'll move on from this.
Yeah.
And I think that, um, I think we can't do that anymore. I think it's
No,
time for us to really just,
yeah,
we need to speak out. This is not acceptable. We cannot continue to tolerate this in 2022, the way that Asians are being treated right now. And now we've got platforms and voices to do this. I'm so
e-
grateful for your voice in this, and the fact that you're teaching future journalists to be aware of their own biases is so important right now.
yeah. And thank you, Grace, for putting yourself out there, and you're running for office. You
Yeah.
are it for the state assembly, right, in New York.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's
Thanks. Thank
real.
you for that plug. Yeah. No, I'm really excited. I'm running down to represent. I'm running to represent the Financial District, Lower East Side, Chinatown, and the East Village. I'm the only Asian candidate in the race, and I would be the first Korean American woman ever to serve in the state assembly when I win.
Oh, did
Yeah.
not know that. Yeah, my soul sister. Yes.
Yes, yes. And I think right now we really do need Asian American representation in government. I mean, this is why we talk about, why don't we get the funding? Why don't our communities get the attention that we need?
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of racial biases as well around the Asian community, and the model myth stereotype, model myth minority kind of stereotype that limits us from getting the resources that we really need in our
Yeah.
communities.
Again, representation. It does
That's
matter.
right.
Really cliche, you guys. I know you hear this all the time, but it's said and used all the time because that's what it means, right? Representation
Yes.
in politics, that's enormous, because that's where shit gets done oftentimes. Yeah, it might not be done properly, and sometimes it's kind of screwed up. But if we have that voice at that level in the political arena, yeah, things aren't gonna move. They're not gonna change.
Hmm.
Legislation isn't gonna happen. Funding won't come our way, right?
That's right.
All of those things. Is that what finally motivated you to jump in? Because you've done this before. You tried before. Did
Yes.
the second go around, and this time I have a good feeling. But yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely one of the drivers. And I think, especially as an Asian woman raising three daughters in this community, I want a better future for them. I want a better future for everyone in the community.
yeah,
But that starts by having some really honest, serious conversations about, justice and equality for everyone, no matter whether they're Asian, Latino, Black, you know, those are the things that we really need to be. We need to have those conversations, and we need the representation to be able to do it.
yeah.
Um,
Grace, I know you have to run in a couple minutes because she's a mom and she has a Zoom call for your daughter's school.
that's right.
But I'm going to ask you one last question, and this is probably like a whammy of a question to end with, but it's something that comes up often, and it's a difficult one.
Mhm,
But often people look at the perpetrators of some of these hate crimes, especially the violent ones, and the perpetrators are African American.
mhm,
And so people start, saying, the anti-blackness starts kicking in, right?
mhm,
And statistically, a lot of anti-Asian hate, incidents are not perpetrated by African Americans, but it seems like the ones that get a lot of attention are.
mhm,
And I have to say, I struggle with this too. I do.
mhm.
And it's one that I want to address properly, but it's a tough one. And I just wonder how you grapple with this too.
I think this is really a time, I will say in New York City, that we are seeing increases in crimes, violent crimes happening in largely communities of color. And that's not just in the Asian communities, that's also in Black communities up in Harlem and that sort of thing. I think this is really a time for us all in communities of color to have solidarity right now and to work together to lift each other up and to find ways to help each other and to make sure that we all have the resources we need to make sure that we're safe. We
Yeah.
can't do this divided. And I think the rhetoric around race and crime is really dangerous. It separates us, it divides us, and the only way we can really, you know, the only real way that we can really attack this head on is by doing it together and in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in other communities. That's work that the Asian community definitely needs to do, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's and I hope I can bridge some of those gaps too when I get up to
Yeah.
Albany.
Me too. And remember, everyone, the model minority myth was created by white supremacy to keep
That's right.
it was the idea of divide and conquer. And it was very clever
Hmm.
because it has worked. But we have to remember where this comes from, this idea
Hmm.
of division within the communities of color. So if we keep that in mind, and like you said, Grace, we have to come together, no matter how difficult it might be. And, it is a struggle. Nothing's
Hmm.
easy. But we do. And I really hope, Grace, that you get into office and you can create that change because you already have as a community activist in New York. So I hope on a state level. And then who knows, you can go to the big show at some point and I'll be there supporting you. Um,
Thank you. Thank you.
it always makes me so happy when I see a fellow Asian American, especially an Asian American woman, and now a fellow Buckeye Korean.
Yes,
That's pretty amazing, actually. We have a lot in common, Grace. So I think we
we
should keep this
do.
conversation going. So I'm so glad that we connected like this.
Thank you. I would love to do it again. Let's do
Let's,
some more
let's,
time. Let's make this a
let's
regular thing.
exactly. No, we should keep this conversation going because I think people
Yes.
will really enjoy it. I'm going to repost this so people will be able to watch it whenever. But get to your meeting, get your school meeting, and let's
Thank
keep in touch.
you.
Thank you, Grace.
Thanks for your time. Thanks
Okay,
everyone for
bye.
joining.
And
Bye.
thank you, everyone, for joining as well. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll do this again. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, keep following and commenting and supporting you guys because this is important stuff we're talking about. And we all want to be really open and honest about what we're going through, the good and the bad. It's been rough. And we all go through our ups and downs, don't we? But we got to be in this together and support each other. Okay. So help each other out. All of us. We can help each other out. Okay. All right. See ya.